All right. Well, as everyone starts to introduce themselves, I'll go ahead and get the party started today. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. It's entitled Citizen Science Activities for Youth Programs. And we're excited today to have with us educational program leaders from 2 citizen science programs here in Oklahoma to introduce their projects and to give us some examples of activities that we can do in our classrooms or our after school settings or our library programs. We have split the day up sort of in the sense that they'll introduce their program and then they'll come back around and share some resources. And then we'll follow up with a Q&A. So if you have a question today, use the Q&A box and we'll try to type answers as we go. And then at the end of the session, the presenters will be able to talk with you. We're here today in this webinar as the second of 3 webinars that we're hosting in a project we called the Spotty Rain Campaign that's hosted by or funded by the National Science Foundation. And we're interested in sharing resources for managing drought risks and encouraging community participation in volunteer drought monitoring. So drought is more than just water quality. It is also a whole ecosystems problem. And we have an amazing set of panelists here who look at water from a variety of settings and include volunteers in their work. We're live here, not from the Education Technology Resource Center, but I'm sorry, the Educational Technologies and Creative Research Lab, who supports these webinars, and my amazing team, Tudolini, Clement, and Io join me today. You can find more stuff about our project at that link down there at the bottom of the screen, which is spottyrain.org. But I just want to thank my team and the National Science Foundation for the opportunity to provide this webinar to everyone today. So we're excited to have Charles Custer, who is a representative from Kokoros, as well as Candace Miller and Cheryl Cheadle from the Blue Thumb organizations. And these are lovely pictures of them in their natural environment, because you'll only get to see them in their mediated environment today. We got together and we asked what should be the purpose of this webinar. And we hope today to be able to share with you water-related educational activities that are appropriate for youth audiences. So whether you're a 4-H educator or a librarian doing a summer program, or a homeschool teacher, or a science teacher trying to think about virtual teaching in the coming year, we hope to inspire you. Both of these programs have opportunities for volunteers, for youth to participate in environmental monitoring of water, which is the definition of citizen science. And we've created sort of a resource document where the link down here is below, and I'll put into chat with multimedia resources for your, to inspire your learning. So with that being said, we'll kick off the panelist discussions. I think that we'll have you go first, Charles, if you don't mind. And so we'll let Charles pull up his presentation. I stopped my screen share and give him about 10 to 15 minutes to describe Kokoros, which is the Community Collaborative for Rain, Hail, and Snow Network. It's a national network of precipitation monitors, but I don't want to take his talking points from him. So whenever you're ready.
All right, well, thank you, Nicole. I'm probably going to bounce back and forth from sharing my screen and not sharing my screen, just because I've got a demonstration to do in my first 10 minutes here. So first thing, I will start off by sharing my screen just to introduce you all to what Kokoros is. And just to make sure, can you see my screen? It says weather affects us all.
Yes.
All right, very good. So as we are aware in Oklahoma and really anywhere in the country, weather impacts us every single day, whether it's just knowing what the temperature is going to be, to is it going to rain, do I need to pack an umbrella with me today, to maybe getting stuck in a snowstorm. But it also spans longer term and larger events as well, such as flooding. The bottom left picture is from the Tulsa, Oklahoma floods of last year. Or maybe it's a prolonged drought. But all of these things in the weather, they're hard to measure because the weather changes really quickly. For example, and you've probably experienced this before, where you might get no rain at your house, but your friend who only lives a mile away talks about flooding and, oh my goodness, I had heavy rain and hail and lightning. And that's because weather changes and is very localized. We can see that in this picture here, where you have this really intense precipitation core. But if you're outside of that precipitation core, you're getting nothing. Or maybe on a larger scale, that an area of really heavy precipitation might cause flooding. For example, over here on the right, the campus of Colorado State University was flooded after about 10 inches of rainfall fell in a small river basin. So really, COCORAs came into existence to try to measure and map these differences in precipitation. So COCORAS, like Nicole said, stands for Community Collaborative Rain, Hail, and Snow Network. And it's made up of volunteers of all ages across the entire country, as well as Canada now, helping scientists map rain, snow, and hail patterns across the state and across the country, and also helping forecasters better predict them as well. Basically, those volunteers take daily precipitation measurements from their backyard, and then they report that information to a website, and that's how that data are shared. I do have a quick video to share, which is produced by COCORA's headquarters in Colorado, and it's geared towards educators, anybody who might be looking for educational experiences or opportunities for youth. So I'll go ahead and play this video real quick.
You get any rain? Have you stopped to think that it probably doesn't rain the same amount from one place to another? How wet did you get? Well, have we got a program for you? You're probably wondering what COCORAS is. COCORAS, the Community Collaborative Rain, Hail, and Snow Network, is made up of thousands of people just like you, mapping and measuring rain and snow as it falls from the sky. Once they collect their measurement, it's only a matter of entering the amounts into our website that shows a picture of how much rain fell across the nation. Why is that good? Take a look at these two cookies. Which would you rather have? The one with a few chocolate chips or the one with a whole lot? The chippy one, right? Well, the same goes with measuring precipitation. Each chip is a measurement, and the more chips on the map, the more meaningful it is to scientists, and it can tell us more about our world. And I was just thinking, you know who could help us add more measurements to our map? Schools. Why, you may ask? The cool thing about COCORAS is that it is a great way for kids of all ages, K through 12 and beyond, to learn about where our water comes from and how the atmosphere works. Students will learn a ton by using and reading a real scientific instrument. Recording data and entering it online is great for students who are learning computer skills. For older students, there are opportunities to do more advanced measurements and also conduct their own data analysis. Participating in COCORA's activities meets several of the state and national standards for science, as well as math, geography, and more. And who uses the data? More like who doesn't use the data. Farmers need to know how much it rained in order not to overwater their crops. City water managers use COCORA's data to both improve water supply forecasts and to monitor and anticipate water demand. Ski areas, whitewater rafting companies, reservoirs for boating, and even professional sports teams use the information too. The National Weather Service uses precipitation data for something called ground validation. This is where they compare the predictions and estimations to what actually happened. Using data from your school, weather forecasters can compare their radar and satellite images and hopefully in the future improve their predictions. And you know we would all love that. No school 2 weeks from Tuesday. The cost of a rain gauge is normally about $30, but as a school, the COCORA's education coordinator may be able to help find a donation. He'll find a way. He'll also help you with instructions, lesson plans, and will even connect you with other volunteers who can assist in getting you started. So come and join, and soon you'll be like us, cuckoo for COCORAs.
All right, so that was just a short little video about COCORAs and what it's kind of all about. Now, one of the most important tools for COCORAs and the volunteers, of course, is the rain gauge, which is what you use to measure how much rain fell at your location. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and hopefully that will allow everyone to see me, because I have my Kokoraz gauge that is usually attached to my fence in the backyard. But all of the gauges have 3 different pieces. It has a funnel, which is what all the rain falls into. It's got an inner cylinder, which makes it really easy to measure the precipitation because it's calibrated there in tenths of an inch. It looks like the camera might be reversing that, but you can get the idea. And then the outer cylinder as well. So to demo this, all 3 pieces are usually put together, and then it's placed outside. Now for today, this nifty water bottle right here, this is going to be our Oklahoma thunderstorm. So our Oklahoma thunderstorm comes along, and all of that rain falls into the rain gauge. And it fills it up a little bit, fills it up a little bit. Oh, I filled up a lot. Okay, very good. What? Well, I've never actually done that before. I put exactly 1 inch into the rain gauge, which is going to make it a little bit complicated to measure. But
you're amazing, Charles. In exactly an inch.
That was an accident. But the inner cylinder holds 1 inch, and then it'll overflow to the outer cylinder. So if it rains 8 inches at your house, you can still measure it. So I'm going to shake this just a little bit so I don't spill it all over the place. But then in the morning, Kokoraz observers measure once a day. You go outside, you take the funnel off, you take the little inner cylinder out, and then you can measure it. So you can see the rain goes almost all the way up to the top. It's reading about 0.97. And so 0.97 is what you would report to the website. So that's just a really quick little demonstration of how the gauge works. I'm going to share my screen again real quick just to finish off my presentation. Now, in terms of volunteering, if anyone were interested in volunteering, you can go to kokoraz.org, which is our main website. And there's a little button in the upper right-hand corner that says Join Kokoraz. That'll pop up a form where you can fill in some information, just so we have names and contact information, as well as a way to map your location. So it could be your school address or your home address. That information is not shared, of course. It's just the way that we get your dot on the map, which I'll show maps and all sorts of different resources for data later on in this webinar. So that, I'll go ahead and stop sharing. That finishes off my intro.
All right, thank you, Charles. So you can have a rain gauge at your school, create that as an observation spot, or students could, or at your own backyard. And so glad to hear about Kokoraz as this easy to participate daily precipitation monitoring. Now I think Candace and Cheryl are going to spend some time telling us about Blue Thumb. Candace, do you have control over the screen?
Yes, I will share my screen here and give you a couple of slides here, just as a brief introduction to our Blue Thumb program. And presentation mode here. So Blue Thumb is hosted by the Oklahoma Conservation Commission. We have a full-time staff of 5 that cover the entire state. And our mission is stream protection through education. Part of our funding, or most of our funding, comes from the Clean Water Act, and specifically the portion that deals with non-point source pollution. And basically it states that all water bodies should be fishable and swimmable. So that means that they should be able to support the life of fish, and you should be able to come into bodily contact with that water and not become ill. So with those 2 goals in mind, we looked to achieve those through 2 different outlets, both of them education driven. One is the volunteer monitoring aspect. Our volunteers go through a pretty rigorous training of about 16 hours, and that makes them eligible to adopt a stream of their choice, near where they live, on their own property, and they go out monthly. They take stream chemistry data, temperature, dissolved oxygen, various nutrient readings, and they also make general observations. Included in their monitoring is twice a year bug collections, and then a fish collection and full habitat assessment about every 4 years. So they really get a good idea, a big picture of what is going on in their stream, whether it's one that flows through their community park, near their school, or on their own property. Another avenue is outreach, and that comes in many different forms with many different types of groups, from setting up a booth at a county fair, to hosting an educator workshop, to working with grade school students in their classroom or at a community natural resource day. And these two things together really allow us to try to hit that mission of stream protection through education. And none of this would be possible without our volunteers. That training is a big commitment in of itself, 16 hours. But like I said, when I started, we only have 5 full-time staff. And to really get the full effect of our program throughout the state, we rely on these volunteers to measure water quality across the state, to reach out to their local communities, schools, and really do that education. Our calendars stay pretty busy with where we're invited, and so we may not know about your local festival. That's a great place to set up a watershed model to educate local citizens, and they are the thing that propels us forward as a group and an organization. We really appreciate all the work that they do, and they're a group of very dedicated individuals. So I think that concludes my brief introduction. Don't want to go too far there, but I will stop sharing here and go back.
Oh, yes. So it occurs to me maybe we needed to define citizen science before we started, but everyone's here today. And this is an excellent example of the range of kinds of activities and participation that you and your students can have in a citizen science project. So Charles's is a 1-day, every morning precipitation monitoring. And if you can't do it every day, they have a multi-report. And then Blue Thumb has this amazing sort of community-based long-term stream monitoring project with so much potential for rich understanding about your own backyard or a resource that's important to you. We're going to talk a minute and turn it back over to Charles to share some just activities, maybe not full-on volunteer opportunities. You don't have to sign up or adopt a stream for the next 10 years, but some ways that you can start, some really excellent resources that Blue Thumb and Kokras bring to the table in terms of getting your kids interested in water and understanding the water cycle and watersheds. Citizen science is important, though, and as Candace points out, the data that student volunteers bring to the table is used for decision making and by scientists in terms of precipitation to predict extreme weather, in like drought, which we're interested in. And so, while it is a commitment to being a volunteer, there's a really fulfilling part, which is that you're part of science and part of problem solving and observation in your community. So that being said, don't forget, if you have any questions, to pop them up in the Q&A spot. And I hope that everyone is able to click on the tiny URL to see the resources so you can go back to and reference and access them as the speakers go through them. But Charles, let's see what CoCoRaHS has in terms of opportunities.
All right. I'm going to share my screen here and basically step you through some of the resources that are on the website. Now, these resources, these maps, these data, they're all available to everyone, whether you're a volunteer or not. I'll show later that if you are a volunteer, you get to be one of those dots on the map, but if you're not, you still have access to all of these things. So really the big and coolest thing about CoCoRaHS are the daily precipitation maps. So that was on the home website. I just clicked on the map of the United States. Every single day, these maps are generated, and all of these little dots are somebody reporting daily precipitation at their house or school or wherever it is that they may be. So you can step back in time. You can see different rainfall events as they moved across the country. We can see that we've been in a little bit dry in Oklahoma the last several days, but if I go back to June 22nd, we can see we had a nice amount of rain in the central part of the United States. And then you can zoom in, you can click on each state. That'll bring you to the precipitation map for each state. So you can see maybe how precipitation varied across the state. Looks like it was much drier in the northeast part of Oklahoma this day, where we only had less than 0.2 inches of rain. But then if we go over towards Lawton, you can even click on the county to bring up that map. One of the observers got 3.4 inches of rain, and everybody else got at least 1.2 inches of rain or so in this area. So these maps are really powerful to just see where it rained and how hard it rained, essentially. These are basically the classic CoCoRaHS maps that I've been showing. We are currently working on a brand new mapping website that will probably be available before the end of the year is over. It's going to be a lot more detailed, and it's going to look similar to what's called the new precipitation maps on the CoCoRaHS homepage. So if I click on new, it pulls up more of like a Google mapping kind of style. It does take a little bit longer to load because there's more information that goes in there, but you can see that you could, zoom into a certain part of the state or anywhere in the country and get a better idea of where those stations are actually located. It's a lot more interactive and dynamic, and that's exactly what the new Maps website is going to look like. It's in beta testing. I've seen it, and it's pretty cool stuff. Another thing that we have in CoCoRaHS in terms of mapping is the condition monitoring. Now, this really relates to how dry or how wet it is at your location. So not every CoCoRaHS observer does these, but we have about 500 or 600 across the country who do. Basically, each one of these little triangles is someone who is telling us what are the drought conditions like at their location. And you can actually click on each one, and you see what their report, what they have said, pop up. And so this person says it's severely dry. They had the touch of green in the pastures, and it's now gone with 95 to 100 degree temperature and wind. So this is just really cool to see. We can bring Oklahoma here. They're still quite dry, several inches below average on the year, but at least they got a little bit of rain in the last week or so. And then the colors in the background are the current drought monitor for the United States. The redder colors are where we're showing more severe drought. For the most part, that matches pretty well with what the CoCoRaHS observers are saying. So this is just a really cool way to see not just the quantitative precipitation, like how much rain fell, but how is that actually impacting what's happening on the ground. And it's not only for drought. People can report flooding and, oh, it's way wetter than normal, or the ponds are really full, that kind of thing. In addition to mapping, you can also go to all of the data and view it in basically a table form. So if you click on the view data and daily precipitation reports, you could bring up all of the reports in a table form for Oklahoma. And this would just allow you to really easily see it's sortable by column. So if I click here, you can see, oh, the maximum rainfall in the state of Oklahoma yesterday was 0.8 inches of rain. But for the most part, looks like everybody reported 0, with only a few people actually getting rain yesterday. There's one other really cool thing in terms of the data that we can visualize. And that's over here on the left, the water year summary. If you click on that, you can get basically all kinds of data for every single state in the country over the last approximately 10 years. So if I scroll to Oklahoma and I want to say, all right, well, what happened in Oklahoma last year? I'll click on 2019. These are all of the different stations in Oklahoma organized by county. So I'm just going to go to my station because I know that there's lots of data there. I reported 338 times last year, apparently, so I didn't quite get to 360, or 365, but that's okay. If you click on charts, it's going to pop up how much rain fell at your location or at whatever location you want over each month over the year. And then it plots it relative to average. So that blue line is the average. So you could see that, oh, this station in Cleveland County in the Norman area was above average for rain during the summer months and the spring months. But it looks like we were a little bit below average here in November and February, especially where we're supposed to get about 2 inches of rain. We only got just over a ½ inch of rain last year. So I really like looking at these water year summaries just because you can really get a sense for what the previous year was like compared to what it should be. Another resource that we have would be the educational videos on the CoCoRa's headquarter YouTube channel. And I showed one of these earlier in the presentation, but there's all sorts of different videos. So there's videos about how to measure different types of precipitation. There are different webinars that CoCoRa's has run over the years. There's also this whole educational series where it talks about weather versus climate, or maybe the water cycle, or assessing drought. And each one of these are short videos, typically about 3 to 8 minutes long, and it's a similar style to the video that I showed earlier in the presentation. Now to finish off the resources, I'm going to go ahead and go back to a PowerPoint style. Of course, one of the resources that you could use would be your data if you were a volunteer. Not only could you actually take the precipitation measurements and learn about doing that and engage in science in that way, but you'd also be one of those dots on the map. You'd be one of those data points that forecasters use to know whether the radar is estimating rain accurately. Or maybe you'd be one of the points on the map that would help a water resource manager know how much water to release from their reservoir or not. And of course, you could also track it yourself. You could see how much rain did I get last year? How much rain did I get last week? The website has all sorts of tools that allow you to explore your own data as well as the data points of everybody else. Now, the last thing I'm going to talk about, it's outside of CoCoRa's, so it's not CoCoRa specifically, but for anyone in Oklahoma, we have a really powerful tool here as well called the Oklahoma Mesonet. You can find all of this at mesonet.org. Basically just maps of what is the temperature outside right now. How much rain have we gotten in the last day, week, month, year? What was yesterday's high temperature? It's a network of 120 weather stations across the state, and they report back every 5 minutes. So it gives really good information about the weather here in Oklahoma. They also have some K through 12 educational resources like different modules that teach about weather and climate and measuring temperature and the instruments that do that, as well as some classroom materials like a glossary, weather events archive, and stuff like that. So that's basically it for CoCoRa's. That's the main page. So thank you everybody for your attention and for attending the webinar today. I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen and turn it back to Nicole.
Thank you, Charles. So lots of questions you might have, put them in the Q&A. I just want to point out I see that there's a lot of 6th grade science teachers on today, and how great these CoCoRa's tools are for using and completing some of those next generation science standards requirements, like using real data, computational thinking. And so, even if you can't have a rain gauge, you can have your students engaging in weather histories and discoveries using these CoCoRa's tools. And those videos are just so fun and engaging. I don't want to babble on. I want to hear more. I want more fun stuff. So I'll let Candace and Cheryl talk a little bit about how they engage students in water.
Okay, I am going to go back to sharing my screen, get some fun photos in here, and Cheryl, oh, I lost us. Cheryl is going to give us some wise words.
Hey, thank you, Candace. Everybody hear me okay? Awesome. Thank you so much, Charles. Every time I've heard anything about cocoa raw, I have been very interested in it. And there's just some things about that I really like. But I also tend to like about anything that engages people with going outside, collecting some kind of data, making observations. And that's one of my favorite things about Blue Thumb is we get people out. Candace has the slide put up that talks about our Blue Thumb education. And with our education, you know, our project is really all about supporting volunteers. Now, myself, Candace, Becky, Kim, and Rebecca, we all find ourselves frequently, before COVID, in front of audiences or bringing people out into the stream. That's how we do a lot of the work we do. But it's really critical that the volunteers who work with us understand that they have so many options of how to do the Blue Thumb program. Some of them want to monitor, and that means they're collecting data on streams month after month, in many cases year after year, so that we can really genuinely know something about those streams. Also, when you come aboard as a Blue Thumb volunteer, you are going to have access to lots and lots of tools that can help make your point. And that way, if you don't feel as comfortable trying to show young people the different benthic macroinvertebrates that live on the bottom of a rock, you may not feel like you have that skill set. There's plenty of different things that you can do, and we can help you stay within your comfort zone. And that's one of the things I really like about the program is we are counting on volunteers, and those volunteers step up to the plate, and we're really pleased with that. In this particular slide, you can see that we have education going on about what actually lives in the stream and learning about those life forms. We have our watershed model and learning about how water moves over the surface of the earth, and in some cases through the surface of the earth, and how it picks up pollutants along the way. We have on the bottom left, we have our tabletop rainfall simulator that shows how the different land uses on the surface of the earth affect how water soaks in, or maybe how it doesn't soak in, and why does it matter. And then we have children learning all about the water cycle with one of our Project WET educational tools called Incredible Journey. Can we go Candace, to the next slide, please?
I will just add one thing is that as a volunteer, you can check a lot of these resources out from us. If you are not a volunteer, staff does have to accompany these resources, but all of these events are things that we were invited to, and places that we brought these activities with us and shared them with groups. So I'll just add that in before we head on to the next little slide here.
Yeah, thank you. We're tag teaming.
I'm not sure why I'm not advancing. There we go.
You've just advanced. And I just, watching Charles' presentation, it started me to thinking about our own website and the information that we have available on all these little Blue Thumb icons that are on our map here. And this is a page from our website. If you were to go on our Blue Thumb site, bluethumbok.com, and you could find this map on there. And if you run your cursor over these icons, you can find streams and the stream monitoring that's been done, and you can click these and you'll come up with a volunteer written data report. And another thing you'll have with these are the fish lists of the fish that we caught on the streams. And now I'm thinking that a really great plan is to, if we could do something like kind of what Cocoa Raw is doing and be able to add a little bit more current, like these were my test results today, and this is how I found my stream, and this is what I've done at my stream. I picked up litter at my stream. I saw this kind of fish in the deep area. I saw sunfish nests. I love the idea of being able to add to that. And so I'm listening to you, Charles and Nicole. I mean, and I think one thing I want to add while we're at this particular slide, and again, I'm going to champion Cocoa Raw too. When you have people going outside, collecting data, making note of environmental conditions, looking around, then you are setting people up to be ecologically literate, to have a grip on science. And I can tell you that our Blue Thumb volunteers that come aboard with us, that get involved in monitoring, that come to the quality assurance sessions, that do some of the extra workshops, that sit down to actually put data together. They sit down with our QA officer and write a data report. Those people are going to have opportunities to be more scientifically literate than folks who aren't investing in some kind of a citizen scientist project that gets them outside and gets them collecting data. And I think that that's critical. And I think that that's to some degree unsung. I think that we don't always realize how very, very important it is for people to have a measure of scientific literacy. And I feel like our volunteers are helping make that happen, because people will ask them, they'll read the reports, and they'll want to know. And we really love it when the volunteers say, hey, I want to check out this so I can educate in my neighborhood association. And, you know, sometimes we're on the road taking tools here and there. That's a great use of our time, is to just get out there and empower these people to keep things happening. Candace, what would you add to that?
And I will just say that, you know, even if you are not a Blue Thumb volunteer, you know, using this map and this resource with your students to see what is in a stream near you. So clicking on the icon and getting that fish list, getting a report of a stream that's in your area, something that the students are familiar with, can kind of personalize it and make them feel more connected and kind of cool. You know, there's information about the stream that's by our town or runs through our town. So that's what I would add to that.
Well, and
then
on what you just said, Candace, and she hit on a key of that's the local stream. And here's the deal: if a volunteer clicks on one of these streams and sees, oh, they found 7 species of fish in this stream. Well, what should you have found? Should you have found, I mean, is that more or less than what a really clean stream should find? And that's part of what Blue Thumb is all about too, is this is what could be possible in a stream from your ecoregion. So if we're not finding that many, what could be the reasons why? So yeah, go ahead please, Candace.
Okay, and the nitty-gritty of some of the other resources we have available, we do have a YouTube channel, and we post a lot of content to both Instagram and Facebook, and I'm gonna stop sharing here for a minute and reshare with a different screen to get you a quick little video here. And we have a lot of these videos available, and typically they're short, about bugs and fish. So I will just play this Fish Friday video for you.
Welcome to Fish Friday. Today we're going to be taking a look at the banded sculpin. In order to get our hands on one of these fish, we traveled to Flint Creek in the Illinois River watershed. We were able to capture a small individual, and the first thing you'll notice about this fish is the coloration. This fish is camouflaged to blend into the gravels on the bed of the stream to be able to hide from predators. One thing that helps them in their life at the bottom of the stream are large pectoral fins that they can use to hold themselves against swift currents. Also notice the large eyes placed near the top of the head. This allows them to see predators coming from above. Banded sculpins typically grow 3 to 5 inches in length and are found in cool, gravel-bottom streams located in the northeast part of Oklahoma. Mostly feeding at night, these fish have large fleshy mouths that allow them to consume prey nearly as large as themselves. Some of their prey items include benthic macroinvertebrates, fish, and snails. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week on Fish Friday.
So that was just a quick example of some of the videos we have available. Fish Friday comes out about every other week. And there's Macroinvertebrate Monday. There's also instructional videos on how to make your own tabletop rainfall simulator. So those are available to anyone, whether you are a volunteer or not. I will go back to my PowerPoint now. And those are the links, and I think I shared them with Nicole to have them in that, she shared in the chat there, to take you there real quick. We also share a lot of photos of just the daily work that we do, and because we are out in the streams and in the field a lot, there's just a lot of really cool information that.
Hey, Kansas, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I don't see a slide, so I think if you're sharing.
Okay, let me try again. Thank you.
Yeah,
Screen share. Okay, PowerPoint. How am I looking now? No. Okay. Well, I can just talk through the rest of it. I guess. I'm not sure what's going on there, but
go ahead.
I'm sorry, Nicole?
I'll see if I can pull it up for you, but you go ahead.
Okay.
The problem solved, yeah.
We're just going to go through some of the other resources that we have available. One of the things we have started doing is implementing socially distanced training sessions. So if you are interested in becoming a Blue Thumb volunteer, you do not have to wait until our COVID situation is done. We do make sure to sanitize everything. Instead of having a 10-person minimum, it is now a 10-person maximum at training events. And we do have one coming up in Claremore in September. So keep an eye on our website and our Facebook page for that information. And included in your training is not only do you get to be certified to adopt a stream of your choice, you also are certified in Project WET. Project WET just very recently had a branding change, and WET used to stand for Water Education for Teachers. Oh, yay! But it now stands for Water Education Today, and that's just to encompass that this education curriculum is for more than just K through 12 teachers. We've used it in our program for years, and the lessons in it are extremely flexible and great for a whole host of people beyond that K through 12 realm. And so if you want to be fully certified in Project WET and have that great 64 activity guidebook, you do have to go through the training. But since a lot of people are now focusing their learning on virtual and distance resources, they have created a lot of things for people that are free of cost. And you can find that at that website. It's just projectwet.org/distance learning. Can we advance, Nicole?
Yes. I think. Oh, yep. More?
Oh, yes. And so here are just some of the things that I just screenshotted from that page of the distance learning resources. There are student lessons and tutorials. Those are self-paced, almost like little mini webinars. They're pretty cute and fun. I've gone through most of them. Some of them have videos that go with, especially the pre-K activities. And you can just click on those links and it'll take you right to them. And another one that I thought is very timely and a good thing that they have made a free resource is water, sanitation, and hygiene resources. It's a lot about germs, clean hands, why we use soap, how long should we wash our hands, proper hand washing technique, things that all of us should have revisited over the last few months, and especially is important for children as they're learning how to grow up in a COVID world. So there's coloring sheets. There's actually children's books you can download for free, little activities and lessons. And there's also a website called discoverwater.org. And this is another free resource. And if children have screen time, this is a great thing for them to be able to kind of click through on their own. There's little games that are a part of this, some printed worksheets you can use. And so I always encourage people to go visit discoverwater.org. There is a lot of stuff on there, and it's been one of those things that's been free forever. It's just kind of hard to find unless you have come to a Project Wet workshop at some point or are otherwise tangentially involved with WET. And so I'm very thankful that they've made all of these things free, because it didn't used to be that way. That's one of the things that's been great. And just to kind of wrap us up here, I'm gonna pass it back to Cheryl real quick.
Okay, well, my dogs are talking a little bit, but we're fixing that. And, you know, this final slide, and I'm really glad, I think that I believe that this webinar was marketed for teachers and librarians and anyone who tries to put together activities, especially for younger people. To me, and with the Blue Thumb program, I think that we're wanting people to realize that they have a role in protecting the environment. They have a role in seeing that we have clean water, to understanding what stream goes through the park just down the road, and to learning a little bit about what I've been using this phrase more and more because I've read such a good book on it, are functional landscapes. And I guess it's really nice to work in a program that you can be 100% behind. Is our program perfect? No, I don't mean that, but I just mean that one of our major goals is to help develop people's understanding of science, and to help make them advocates for their local resources, and to do in their own yard what will even make a difference. So our Blue Thumb program is about helping people have connections with the outdoors. And one of the things that I've learned a lot about in recent years is that children need repeated quality outdoor experiences. They need time outdoors to play. And I'm not talking about soccer practice. I'm not talking about going to a football game where you're just sitting outdoors. I'm talking about actual time outdoors where they pick up and look under rocks, where they wonder what this plant is. They wonder what chewed a hole in this leaf. And we try to get that point across to the people who work with us and become exposed to Blue Thumb. And that's a really major that's a major effort that we are making. We've even modified some of our work plans to try to pull together people who have that same belief of helping children gain these outdoor experiences. I don't give up on the adults. I think it's very important that adults have these outdoor experiences too. But the world is just so different today. And if you're familiar with the I think it's the Child and Nature Network, but it may be Children and Nature Network. But you can get real current studies. I was surprised to learn that children don't have the same roaming rights that I had as a child. I was allowed to walk about 3 miles from home in about third and fourth grade. Kids aren't allowed to do that in most communities now. And really, there isn't more violence. There isn't more abductions. We just hear about them immediately. And so that changes our perspective as to what is safe. If I'm going to be a good parent, what do I allow my child to do? What do I not? It's a culture thing. But anyway, I don't need to keep just talking about my philosophies. So I will say this. Get in touch with us. Send us some questions here. And I'm talking to Leni, Nicole, Charles, myself, Candace. Get in touch with us and let's talk together about what are these things that are ultimately going to save the world. And it's and I didn't make this up, but it's not by a few people doing everything right. It's by a lot of people making some intentional great steps. So let's keep that in mind. And Nicole, we're getting so close to the end. What else are we going to cover?
I want to echo what Cheryl is saying, which is that everyone whose face you can see here today is committed to youth-based education in terms of water and citizen science, and would love to hear from you. So if you have an inkling of interest, you just want to see how a CoCoRaHS map works, or you want to sign up for that upcoming volunteer webinar, please, reach out to us and we'll follow up with you all with a lot of information. I had some questions. I thought we could, one for each of you. On my clock, we still have 7 minutes, so I'll say them both. Charles, I wanted to know if you could just sort of re-emphasize why that micro level rain data is important to decision makers. So in terms of drought, or just in terms of flood or management, why is it important that I add my data to the set? And then for Blue Thumb, I'm curious about how your volunteers observe or experience drought conditions in their streams, and what impacts you might see in the field. So I'll let you go first, Charles.
All right, so I'm a meteorologist, so I'll answer that question based on a meteorological perspective. When it comes to either doing research about storms or trying to forecast what they're going to do, if we don't know what happens at the surface, it's really hard to learn and do better next time in terms of a forecast. So we have radar data, which is really powerful. It can give us estimates of what's going on, but it does not tell us what's happening at the surface. The radar beam is always above the surface. So we rely on people, whether it be CoCoRaHS observers or storm spotters, to tell us what happens at the surface. So I can just quickly tell a story. I was trying to do a research on, I was researching a big storm that happened in Oklahoma. And I was looking for reports about this storm. And even though we have the Mesonet here in Oklahoma, and we have about 150 CoCoRaHS observers, which sounds like a lot, but we really need thousands of observers in order to fill in all the holes. And I learned that firsthand because this storm was right in the hole. There was no Mesonet data, there was no CoCoRaHS data, there was nothing. And so I was trying to learn about this storm and I couldn't do it because there was no one there to say what happened at that spot. So the more holes we can fill in, the better we're gonna understand storms and then be able to better predict them in the future.
Yes, I think the whole origin of CoCoRaHS was in Colorado with a major flood where the rain station didn't capture the amount of rain that came down further. And so this idea that your rain gauge could assist in flood management. I also know that like after wildfires in Colorado, the National Weather Service ships these rain gauges to people to manage the floods that might happen after a fire. So
Yep.
Tons of kinds of managers I know use the data, from meteorologists to city planners to all kinds.
Absolutely.
There is one question in here for Blue Thumb. Connie thinks she might have taken a wet training at OSU one summer, and she wants to know how she can discover if she did that. Can she contact you?
Connie, if you can send me an email, we've changed hands from coordinators, so I can try to dig back in the records to see if I can find your information, and if so, we can get you set back up and make sure you're in touch with all the resources that you should be as someone who went through a workshop.
And then I would be interested, Cheryl and Candace, about the intersections between stream monitoring and drought. So one of the things that our project does is encourage these discussions. And when streams are down, how does it impact the monitoring that you're doing?
So we do train our volunteers for what happens in case of drought. They sample in a certain segment of stream right above a riffle, and oftentimes of drought, we lose that flow in the riffle, and you may have no flow at all, and you may have a small pool, and they're instructed to make adjustments on how they're sampling, but to also make notes of that in their data sheets so that we can reflect back and keep that tied to that data if we have low dissolved oxygen, high nutrients, things like that. But there's also times when there is no water in their stream at all. They have a completely dry stream. And so during those times, they're instructed to fill out the front of their data sheet, which is just stream observations, air temperature, what's in and around the stream. Do you have litter? Do you have manure in the stream? Things like that. And they still make those observations, but they don't run any of the tests. There's no water to do that with. And one of the things that impacts them the greatest is we need flow in order for us to collect macroinvertebrates. And in the summer months especially, that can be tricky if we're experiencing drought conditions. There's not going to be flow, and we can't make a collection. That does make for a lot of sad faces when we meet with them at their stream site. But it is an opportunity for us to have that educational moment with them of why this is not a good time to collect, not just because of the flow, but because of the environmental conditions surrounding the stream, and what the data, how that would affect the data. And so every time we visit the stream with a volunteer, there's a lot of education opportunities for us. So.
And if I might just say, Candace just said, she really just said, she gave you a whole story of ecology in her few sentences, because we are able to then talk to volunteers and through observations, not just what we've got to say, but through observations, and how do things look the following year and what's different. And I'll just give you one example. We had a huge drought that was just wrapping up in, I think, 2013. We had a long period of drier weather than typical. And a lot of our Blue Thumb sites did just what Candace said, and they didn't have things in them. Now, the next couple of summers, when we started doing our benthic macroinvertebrate collections, we were finding more dragonfly and damselfly larvae in those collections. Now, why do you think that would be? Just what are some thoughts? Well, let me just throw my thought out there because we're at the end of our time. It's because during all that drought, we had a lot more vegetation that started growing and encroaching on the stream proper. So when water started filling those streams again, we had more of that vegetation that will tolerate being inundated with water. And often, a lot of these species we were finding, you tend to find them more in vegetation areas than under rocks. So that's just one tiny piece of an ecological puzzle to put together that we were able to do during this time when the waters were coming back. That's just one of many. Become a Blue Thumb volunteer and let's get out there and find our own things together.
Yeah, it's amazing. I hope that everyone on who gets to view this later on considers having a rain gauge for daily observations, or, engaging in stream monitoring and really seeing, like Cheryl's saying, the seasonal and annual changes that we have on the into our water systems. I want to thank everyone for being here, the panelists, the attendees, colleagues like from the Center of Research for Research in STEM Teaching and Learning we're on today. We'll follow up with everyone in an email who registered for the webinar or was there today. And I would like to encourage you to join the social media for Kokoros and Blue Thumb, but also for our Spotty Rain project, because we'll have upcoming webinars in 2 weeks. We'll be back here again with Blue Thumb and SciStarter to talk a little bit more specifically about how undergraduate students might use citizen science in their for their research experiences. And if you're a teacher on today or a librarian on today, I want to make a little bit of a plug. On our website, we have a $250 mini grant opportunity for a public librarian to do a program related to drought. And so if you saw something from Blue Thumb or Kokoros that you would like to share, or if you're a teacher, you might want to partner with a public librarian and do some type of after school or community-based learning activity. We would love to be part of supporting that financially and with rain gauges. We have lots of webinars and a little bit of feedback for you if you would be gracious enough to answer. And so with that, I'll adjourn the meeting and encourage you to definitely reach out to all of us moving forward, and wish you the best of luck in your water education endeavors.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you.